All right. Thanks so much for being here. You probably noticed it's a little bit of a different setup. Greg, you're still in your normal seat, the host seat, but you are the one being interviewed today to talk about real estate.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Roeder. And I'm the other half of Greg and the Selling Fort Collins overall brand. So we're really just going to spend some time talking about Fort Collins real estate and everything that you have done over the past, since 2006. So you've been doing real estate in Northern Colorado since 2006. And so just want to pick your brain and see what all have you learned over this time. What should people expect for the years coming up? Neighborhoods you're excited about? I think definitely talking about different advice and pieces that we want to share with both buyers and sellers. But then we're going to get into more like personal stories and just really get a chance to get to know you and what you've gathered over the past 17 plus years. So I think just to kick it off, I would love to talk about how did you get into real estate initially, and kind of what led you to be drawn to this industry?
Sure. Yeah, well, this is fun. I'm excited about doing this. For everybody listening, Sarah is a huge part of this. She's been more in the background, so it's fun to introduce everybody to you today. And yeah, we'll get into how did I get into real estate. So growing up in Iowa, there was a really big real estate guy in our area that was just very close with my dad. I watched what he did, and I knew I wasn't going to be a doctor or a dentist or everyone in my family is a doctor or a dentist or in the medical field somewhere. And I have this weird fear of hospitals and going to the doctor. So I knew
that was ruled out. Yeah.
That was ruled out immediately. So I knew that wasn't going to be in the cards for me at all. But I always just looked up to this guy who was my dad's good friend. It was just exciting what he was doing, just kind of, meeting with people, helping people, connecting. And it just seemed exciting to me. I didn't know exactly what he did, but I knew it seemed exciting. So that was my first kind of introduction to it. And then I was always entrepreneurial growing up. So I was always working, always, had just so many multiple jobs through high school and especially in college. I mean, when I wasn't in class, I was working when so many of the other kids, students were, going out and having fun, which is fine. But I was working, 2, 3, even 4 jobs at certain times. So entrepreneurial. And then as I started getting towards the end of undergrad at the University of Iowa, that's what I kind of felt calling me. So I ended up in Fort Collins just visiting my sister when she was going to vet school at CSU, and she was the resident vet, amazing vet program at CSU, as we've talked about on this show before. I just fell in love with the city. I absolutely fell in love with the city, and it kind of started there, and just putting the two together, knowing that I wanted to be in real estate here, knowing that I had a place to crash, at least in the beginning, because my sister lived here with her husband. That's kind of where it all started.
Well, and you were talking about being entrepreneurial. And so, even before you got into real estate, that looked like some different ventures. So for those who don't know, there was a gym Greg had started in Arizona, sold that. And so, when you came to Fort Collins and you're thinking, I want to be in real estate, what was the light bulb moment? Like, why Fort Collins? Why did it suddenly all come together for you? Was it when you came back from California? Kind of what was all the perfect pieces that aligned for you that said, this is where I want to do this?
Yeah, I think it was this moment when I was back here, and I was back here to see my sister because I had a dog, and the dog unfortunately had to be put down, and it was a sad day at the CAU Vet Center for me. But the people were so kind there. I was crying there. I was inconsolable. My sister wasn't there at that moment. She was, she had all sorts of responsibilities, and these people who did not know me, and I don't believe they knew and my sister was a student there. I was a stranger, but they were so kind. I remember one volunteered. They said, "Can I go get you something to eat? Can I get you some food?" Because they had, I'd been there all day. They knew I hadn't eaten. And I just thought there was something about the area. It was beautiful. It was all these things. The people were so nice. And in that moment, I think that was the moment I was like, this is it. Like, this is where it's going to happen. I'm going to get into real estate. And so I think that was really the moment.
Well, now that you've been here since then, Fort Collins has obviously changed
Mm-hmm.
a lot. Talk to me a little bit about some of the big shifts, big changes you've seen over all this time in Fort Collins.
I have seen it change, but it still to me seems like the biggest small town. Like the one thing that has not changed is the community here. People care about this community. You have you have friends. You get to see these friends. You're not all 45 minutes away in traffic. I mean, it's approachable, and yeah, it's kind of like the biggest small town, I think, where it's approachable. You have these amazing restaurants, and what's changed, it's become a better version of what it was then. It had those things then, the beauty, the community, the approachability, and I think that's all just been amplified. If you look at some of the people that have been on this show that are committed to keeping our parks beautiful, more parks even, and the trails and these places downtown like the Elizabeth Hotel and the amazing restaurants. There's just more of the great things that were already here. And so it's been amplified. And then more great people. I think as this area has become better known, clearly more people have moved here. And a lot of those people are just really talented, interesting, entrepreneurial people who, just have come here. So I think it's, become a better version of what it was back then.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now I know that was a little bit of going down memory lane for you and might come back there too, but I do want to talk about this past year of 2024. It was a big year just in terms of a lot of changes that had happened, but a big year for you and the work you've been doing, working with, luxury real estate. And so I really want to dive a little bit more into 2024. So what are some significant trends maybe that you really see kick off or did kick off and maybe are even going to progress into 2025? And then we can maybe shift a little bit even into your predictions. But let's talk about 2024.
Yeah. I think 2024 is, it's one of these last few years that have just really seen a big turn towards an older, wealthier demographic having more control over real estate. And I think sometimes when people think of an older, wealthier demographic, they think of, someone who's retiring in Florida or California or somewhere like that who just wants to, maybe kick back a little bit. And that is not the demographic that I found to be moving here. The demographic of people moving here, it's, older, wealthier, but fit, lively. I mean, these people are living a super vibrant lifestyle. They have their health, they have their wealth, and they have time now. They have leisure time. So, that's really what I've seen change. And that has been very good for the luxury market, the higher price points. If you have a property in this market that has some unique features like, it's right in Old Town, or you're on a lake, or you have mountain views, or really good trail access, walkability is huge. If you have these features and you have a nice, unique product, it's done very well. In these last few years when, maybe the rest of the market has been kind of, sort of flat, sort of plateaued, the luxury market's been really strong. And I mean, especially compared to other parts of the country.
Yeah. Why do you think that is, though, that it's really strong here in Fort Collins? Is it because we have the walkability, we have great dining, but you can also be on a hiking trail in 15 minutes. Like, what are all the pieces that are kind of playing into why, in some ways, I think we've even talked about we're almost a little bit in this bubble, this like beautiful little bubble. Well, tell me more about that.
This older, wealthier demographic, that's kind of moving here more is really like they're being drawn here, not because it's they're going to golf and live here for only part of the year, or because there's it's kind of a vacation place. A lot of times it is a second home or even a third home, but they are coming here to be closer to family. They're coming here to be closer to maybe their children and or their grandchildren, and I think that just kind of keeps us in this really special category where it's vibrant and it's not like it's not I don't know what the word is. It's sort of like detached. Some of these communities, like Palm Springs is one that comes to mind. Great place, but people live there, and it's kind of their places are empty, and then it's not great for the restaurant scene and everything. And why are we in a bubble? There's that. I want to touch on that because that speaks to the community aspect here and kind of things that are pulling people here. It's kids, it's grandkids, it's families wanting to be together, but also just employment, really strong employment. If you look at the tech sector here, Broadcom, AMD, Microsoft, Intel, these tech companies, and then of course CSU is the largest employer in our area. CSU, the healthcare sector has been really huge. UC Health, Banner, Kaiser Permanente, like all of these like jobs have really kind of propped it up too. So there's all of these things going here. I think there's there's a multi-generational thing happening here where families want to be together. Like me, after I moved here, I've moved helped my entire family tree move here, as you know.
Yeah.
Right next door to us.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's within like a 5-mile radius of us. That's happened in other families too. There's this multi-generational thing. There's this unbelievably robust, dynamic, local, diverse economy here. It's a, quote, college town. In 300 days of sunshine, the trails. I mean, we have 26 breweries. We have 7 unique music venues. We have, 2 different state parks that are like 20, 25 minutes away that are both like 2,500 plus acres of open space, biking trails, hiking trails, walking trails. A 6-mile long Horsetooth Reservoir. Speaking of the interesting people that have moved here, one last year she retired, was the head rowing instructor at West Point Academy. Could have moved anywhere. She moved to Fort Collins to, hang out with my Aunt Chris and row Horsetooth Reservoir 6 miles length each way in the mornings. So long answer, but that's a question that kind of gets me excited because that is why we're in a bubble. I think people tend to think about two things that are fascinating. One, just real estate in general. People think about it as they read the national news and then they think they know, well, that's real estate. It's kind of like reading a national weather forecast from Los Angeles to New York City, and like, well, I know the weather. Well, of course, the weather is completely different wherever you're at in between, and there is just that much nuance here. That's not just in the country, of course, but even in northern Colorado. If you look at Fort Collins compared to some of the surrounding markets, it's a very different scenario here. And even inside of Fort Collins, I think there are a lot of different neighborhoods that are, another analogy is the stock market is a market of stocks. The same with the real estate market. And I think Fort Collins is a very special stock, if you will.
Yeah. That's it's almost like we planned this. We actually didn't, but I do have questions about neighborhoods on watch. So this is one part, at least I overhear it all the time because we work together. I hear people asking you all the time, like, what neighborhoods, like, do you really like? Or, what's the best kept secret neighborhoods? Or is this a good neighborhood? Should I move here if I have young kids, older kids? Does it matter? So I think specifically looking at 2025, because we know this can change year by year, I'm sure you're probably even going to talk about that. But what are some interesting neighborhoods you really enjoy around town? Why do you like those neighborhoods? Do you feel like they're continuing to grow into this next year? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of interesting neighborhoods. And I think the way I approach this with people is I first talk to them really in depth about what they like to do. And we kind of start there. What's important to them? For a lot of people, and we understand this now, it starts with their kids. It starts with their kids. And so that's something we want to know. Like, well, what are your kids into then? Like, what's important to your kids? How do you envision your kids growing up? For others, it might be, access to trails, nature, Old Town. For others, it might be, I don't want my commute to be very far, and they might work in more of a regional location, so they don't want to be too far. So so it really starts there. So I think the best neighborhood is so contingent on who you are and what your goals are. Our goal, our mission is to help people live the life they love. And if we're gonna do that with our business, it is It's really important that we fully understand that what that life looks like for them. Just looking at it from a value standpoint, though, where I think values are going to go up. It's always supply and demand. It's always supply and demand, and there has not been homes being constructed here in northern Colorado. And if people get one thing from this podcast, this is something that I talk about a lot in private conversations with people. It's they don't understand a few things, and of course they wouldn't, not being right inside of this world like I am, but the inventory levels are just still at like all-time lows. I mean, a balanced market is 6 months, and I think a lot of people probably know that that's 6 months of inventory, meaning that in your market, wherever your market is, if there were no more homes listed, it would take 6 months for all of the existing homes to sell. So 6 months of inventory is a balanced market between buyers and sellers. We, in this market now, depending on the price point, are somewhere between 1.8 and about 3 months of inventory, depending on which price point you're in. So very low inventory. And someone listening might think, well, that will change. That ebbs and flows over time. It has historically in the past, but for a while now, the new normal has been quite different. There has not been homes being built. The cost of construction skyrocketed in this area. The cost of infrastructure like water is a big one. The cost of a water tap is so much higher. The cost to construct a home. I mean, we're doing our remodel right now. We have firsthand experience with this.
We're living it. Yeah.
And so you extrapolate that out over, it's not just marginally more expensive. It's astronomically more expensive. So, less land available. There's more hurdles to building on that land. So it's always a supply demand equation. And so the supply side has really been limited for a very long time now. And at the same time, this robust local economy, this amazing place to live with all the nature, the trails, the 300 days of sunshine, demand is growing, demand is increasing. And that just creates upward pressure on prices. And it is, like I said, different in Fort Collins compared to surrounding areas. The equation looks different in surrounding areas, but that's how it looks in Fort Collins. And so, I think when we're, just sort of looking at that and understanding prices, and back to the original question of certain neighborhoods, that supply demand, if you look at Old Town, they're not making any more Old Town. That's a place where prices are going to keep going up. The west side of town, where you have close, easy access to the trails, the parks, and there's mature landscaping. Schools like Rocky Mountain High School that's like churning out professional baseball players. All of these, that's an area that I'm seeing. There's a few specific neighborhoods there that really, you look at like the Quail Hollow that is one. Clarendon Hills is another. There's a few others in there too, kind of smaller pocket ones. I think the north side of town, again, people want mature landscaping. The interesting thing about the north side of town is, we know because that's where we live, is you have open spaces. You have mountain views from many parts of that north area. You have mature landscaping. You're like 10 minutes from the heart of Old Town. Super easy, super quick to get into Old Town. Lakes, the Fort Collins Country Club. So the north side, the Old Town area, the west side, I think southeast Fort Collins too. It's like southeast Fort Collins it's such an amazing place for kids. The city has been so proactive about the parks, the rec centers. I mean, there's a new rec center that's going to be constructed in the next several years there, maybe a little sooner than that even, that is going to just be phenomenal. And in a part is going to have the public library that's on the southeast side is going to be moved into that. It's going to be a larger library, indoor pool, outdoor pool, lazy river, water slide, many other things there, but the amenities there. It's going to be a LEED certified building. You look at Twin Silo Park, where we like to take our kids. Just so southeast Fort Collins, that's where the tech sector is really heavily located too. Proximity to jobs, the healthcare sector, the University of Colorado healthcare campus, Banner, Kaiser are down there as well. So southeast Fort Collins, North Fort Collins, West Fort Collins, Old Town. If it seems like I'm listing a lot of areas in Fort Collins, I am. But those are the hottest of the hot spots.
Well, and I think, like you said, right, it kind of depends on, well, what are your goals and how do you want to live your life?
Hmm.
And all those different areas attract people based on what they're really excited about or what they really need in their life. And then there's all these sub pockets within those pockets. So, yeah, I think to your point, it kind of just depends on what people want and where they really see themselves in the city. And I think what's unique about Fort Collins and watching you over the years, and we travel a lot. And what I love about it is, even though we're all part of the same fabric, the same community in Fort Collins, all those different areas you just named, they do have their own little bit of, personality that's associated with them. And that has that big city feel. But then once you're in any of these communities, that same small community spirit is there, which is really neat. And so that feels like such an attractive part of Fort Collins, and why people keep moving here and keep asking you questions and working with you, or they come visit us once and they say, how do I move here in the next 3 to 5 years? And so I think on that note, I'm curious to hear, as we're going into 2025, and this is like putting on your prediction cap, I guess, but just kind of thinking through like what type of predictions you might see for 2025 here in Fort Collins, maybe specifically in that luxury category, or maybe as a whole, if you want to touch on that. Because what I really want to hear is, with those predictions, kind of advice you're starting to see yourself give to buyers, to sellers, to actually kind of win in the market, get where they want to be, or be able to sell in order to go where they want to go.
Yeah, those are great questions. I think let's start with advice for buyers, and patience is the biggest one. I think I do see a lot of impatience. A lot of people are busy, especially these days. Everyone has a lot of things going on, and so people will fly into town and they'll get an Airbnb, or they'll stay at the Elizabeth or the Armstrong in Old Town for like a night, and then they'll fly back. And some of these people, they've already had exposure to Fort Collins and been here a while and lived here and spent maybe time in northern Colorado, then that's one thing. But many of these people haven't, and they're just trying to kind of cram a lot and see all sorts of different things, like do quick drive-bys of areas and get some thoughts from me. And I can help these people, and I will continue to, but I always encourage them, like, just more time. Like, you stay for 4 days, 5 days, 6 days a week, and really plan out an itinerary, and let me help you do that. Let us help you do that, because you need to really see these things, live these things, not take my word for it. But I had somebody 2 weeks ago who came down, and yeah, he stayed for a little bit longer, and he had some questions for me, and I said, I could answer those, but we don't know each other that well, and you might think I'm just a biased real estate person. So, clearly I'm high on Fort Collins, so
Right.
maybe
Yeah. So there's a little bit of bias.
There's
sure.
a little bit of bias, sure. But
Yeah.
I said, I want you to, and we talked about breweries. He's a big beer drinker. And I said, why don't you just ask the people you're sitting next to at the brewery?
I love that. Yep.
And see what they had to tell you. And he did. And he ended up having great long conversations. Long story short, made a few new friends, and got really a lot of the answers he was looking for, just more information, and it's kind of one of those things where you just need to put the time in. So that's the buyer advice. Patience, put the time in, stay here for 4, 5, 6 days a week.
Talk to your fellow drinking patron at the
yes.
brewery. Yeah, I would add that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's other tactical things we can get in for buyers. Like, once there's
once you're actually in it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's strategic negotiation things that I can help with, contract stuff and all those things. But you
have to start somewhere.
Yeah, you have to start. But
that's
you start there. The advice for sellers in this market is just really maximize the exposure to the market outside of Fort Collins. Right now, even just 5 years ago, if you look at the number of clicks on Fort Collins listings coming from the Denver area, and this is per Realtor.com analytics, 5 years ago, the number of clicks was about 6%. 6% of the clicks were coming from the Denver market. Today, it's 20, almost 27% of the clicks on Fort Collins listings are coming from the Denver area. So exposing these listings, marketing these listings proactively, strategically in front of these Denver area buyers, in addition to the out-of-state buyers. Earlier in their conversation, we talked about the this older, wealthier demographic. Well, they are coming from other markets many times. The past year, going back to 2024, late in the year, we had the record sale price in Fort Collins that happened in November. Someone from Austin, in 2024, buyers from Austin, buyers from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, buyers from California, Texas, Utah, Minnesota. So these out-of-state buyers are, many of these people in this older, wealthier demographic are from this out-of-state area. So targeting them strategically, digital ads.
What states are you typically seeing that? Are there certain states that are coming up more often than others? Just like how you talked about Denver is probably the biggest city.
Yeah. One, actually, when I just said that, I didn't even mention the one that is the top feeder market for Fort Collins, and that's the Phoenix, Mesa, Chandler MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area. That actually includes Scottsdale. And that MSA is an interesting one in Arizona because it actually includes about 65% of the total population in Arizona is in that MSA, and it's approximately 13% of all clicks on Fort Collins listings are coming from that Phoenix, Mesa, Chandler MSA that includes the Scottsdale area. So that's the number one feeder market. A lot of those are second, even sometimes third home buyers looking to summer in Fort Collins. Summering in Fort Collins has become a new trend. And you can kind of see why. If it's 117 degrees and, concrete everywhere, you're not going to be out golfing in that. You're probably not going to be outside at all. So when they can, spend 3 months or whatever they want to spend summering in Fort Collins, check out the amazing music venues, the outdoor concerts, the festivals. Old Town is maybe the most picturesque place to be. Recently ranked the number 4 downtown square in the entire country by USA Today. So just shout out to Brian Sukup,
Yeah,
our neighbor,
just having that vision. Yeah,
for having that vision for Old Town Square and all the programming that goes into that amazing place. And people walk into Old Town in the summer, and so many people who I've worked with from outside of this market have just commented that it's like right out of a movie. It does feel that way. So that Phoenix area is the number one feeder market, but lots of others.
You actually really briefly talked about it, the big sale that happened last year. I want to talk about some big wins that happened for you professionally this past year. That was obviously a big one for multiple reasons, but can you talk to us a little bit more about that particular property, and just what all came together to make that go so well and attract that buyer? And maybe how have you plugged that in, or how is that part of your normal strategy when you work with anybody?
Yeah, I think the property was just amazing. Like if you do special things, and one thing we like to do and help coach people on, advise people on, is how to do special things at your property. And we were lucky to have great relationships with very skilled individuals in town who we bring in to help with some of that stuff. But this is one where the owner just did a phenomenal job, bringing in Sean Tomlinson, who's been on this show. Tomlinson Designs, just to select amazing materials to design and construct an amazing property. 6,500 square foot masterpiece with exceptional outdoor living spaces. Outdoor living spaces are such a crucial aspect in this market, and they truly created a work of art. And it is on an acreage on the south side of town. It used to be apple orchards, so just beautiful, picturesque. Then they brought in, Clint from Detailed Landscape, who is an absolute savant in the world of landscaping, to do things like a Colorado cactus garden. And, this is a meditation area over here. And this is how we're going to, kind of, the water rights water that comes. And this is how we're going to be able to store some of that in underground tanks and unbelievable design. That's what set the sale price. I think what I was able to do in my marketing with that is just really try to attract, which we did, that out of state buyer who was going to come in, and it was brought to the property by another local agent here who's a friend of ours. So just those relationships in the local brokerage community, combined with the strategy and the techniques to really cast a wide net. And there was other interest. There was a lot of interest. You kind of want to make sure you have that. You want to make sure you have over 100 people at the open house event like we did, with the coffee being catered and creating that energy. And it allowed us to get our price, keep our price, and keep some pressure on that price too, because of all the other interested parties.
Special shout out on that to Craft Coffee Cart. We've used them multiple times at open home events, and they're just incredible. The coffee is phenomenal, but really good people. So I had to put a plug in for them. They're not paying us to say that. I just wanted to say that. So they are really great. So we've talked a lot about successes and the shiny parts of Fort Collins and real estate and everything that's going well, but as with anything in any market, there's challenges too, right? And so I'm kind of curious to hear about what are some challenges maybe you've faced or you typically see in our market, and what works for you or you find is working for you to help overcome those challenges when working with buyers and sellers.
Yeah, I think we'll start kind of on a broader scale, and then we'll kind of, go into kind of buyers and sellers. I think, some of the challenges in the market are just like optimizing all the assets in this city. I think one thing, nothing's perfect, but you see, I'm really excited and optimistic to see what ends up happening in the Midtown area with the Midtown Mall redevelopment. Over a decade ago, that received it was over $300 million redo. And it looks like it's hopefully going to receive another $300 to $400 million redo after a local group purchased that. And we'll take the kids there. It's fun, but we know it can be so much more. Like, we know that can be so much more. That can be optimized. So I think some of the challenges are just the cost of construction right now. Some of the challenges are how do you finance that with higher rates? And so there's that just is an area that I think there's so much room for improvement. That's kind of the one is like almost perfect as the city is to me. That's something that comes out kind of on a broader scale of where there's room for improvement. But going back just to kind of working with buyers and sellers, I think the challenge working with buyers in a low inventory environment is just, look, it takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of patience to find something exactly as you want it. Sometimes it might even take a little bit of creativity. I think a lot of people maybe used to other markets seeing a bit more inventory. They just aren't as used to seeing, fewer options. They want to go out and look at a bunch of places. There aren't a bunch of places to look at. So I think you really have to know what you want coming in here. And that's why we ask a lot of the questions that we do. I ask a lot of these questions to really get dialed into what they want their lifestyle to look like, so that we can hone in and try to find, whether it's a on-market or off-market opportunity to kind of connect them with the right place. The sellers, I think it's really just, sometimes being patient too. I think that's, you want to get that price. I think takes a little bit more patience than it did a few years ago. So I think patience. I also think it takes a little bit more investment. It takes a little bit more dialing in. That extra money to do the landscaping work on the exterior right before the pictures are taken. Right before we started rolling, we're on the phone with the window cleaner.
Yeah, that was real life. We should have recorded that. Yeah,
Tony at the property. We're just helping somebody get the windows cleaned. That professional cleaning. Painting, refinishing the hardwood floors. These are all things that have happened in the last week. New light fixtures. Making strategic investments, improvements in the property to dial it in that extra 5, 7, 10%. because you're going to get that money back in terms, it's going to sell quicker. You're going to get that money back and then some. I mean, these are investments that when people make, if they're done strategically, they're going to 2-3x that investment immediately on the return and sell their property more quickly. But those are things that in years past maybe didn't need to be done. They do need to be done now if you want to, get the, we'll go a little bit further into the weeds even for the sellers. I think the Coming Soon campaign is huge. The MLS in this area is unique in that it allows people to put properties in the MLS, which then gets syndicated out to Realtor.com, Zillow.com, all of these places. If it's my listing, it's going to go on, LuxuryRealEstate.com and get some exposure in some unique places. It gets out there early. You cannot allow showings during this Coming Soon time frame, but you can get it out there. So you get the media together, you do everything's looking perfect. You get it out there as Coming Soon. It's almost like a line starts to build at the door so that, maybe you were going to get, 8, 12 showings in the first 2 weeks. Well, now you're going to get 8, 12 showings on that first day. And they're going to show up maybe in that 90-minute, 2-hour time frame. You're doing the open house event along with other people from the neighborhood who are just curious. Next thing you know, it's standing room only. And then you're setting the stage for a really good offer and probably a good situation for the seller.
I love that. It actually makes me think too, just about being adaptable in this market, you specifically in real estate, because real estate is always changing. So obviously, we've been together for 13 years. Therefore, I joke that I've also been in real estate for 13 years, just being alongside and watching it. And one thing that I know and I've noticed is ability to maybe not just read the trends, but then be able to put action behind what needs to happen because of what I'm seeing play out. And so, for example, I think about, the rise of social media and the importance to that to real estate. And I think maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago now, you didn't really see as many people using that as a strategy for marketing or using any type of, I should more so say digital marketing. That's something that is, I think, a big part of your strategy with sellers. And so why do you think that is so important now? It's something that you offer. It's something that is almost a non-negotiable for how we work with sellers. But kind of what's been the big difference of having started really diving into that almost 4 years ago, and kind of the growth and the audience and people that are paying attention to you? What difference does that make for these listings and for people who are listing with you?
Yeah, it's huge. And I think I've always tried to do what the brokers in the big markets are doing, just kind of on the cutting edge. And if you really look at, what are they doing in Manhattan? What are they doing in LA? What are they doing in just some of these larger markets? And what are the really successful brokers doing in those? You can take things from that and bring them here. And why not? It's available to all of us. And sometimes it costs a little bit more, but it's worth the investment. So you mentioned 4 years ago, that's when it really started becoming on the luxury residential side, really, interesting to start using platforms like Realforce, which is a platform that uses AI, because, that's when the AI thing started really coming on. Now everyone's using it more, but it uses AI to track buyer behavior. So I got into that. I started studying the science, and that's what we're really leaning hard into now. It's the buyer who is in Phoenix, Arizona, who clicks on a listing in Fort Collins that happens to be in the same price point as one of my listings. And then the next time that buyer is on their social media account, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, it will put ads into their feed. So they're seeing the property, they're seeing my listing. And it's really important in the luxury category because you are trying to get these listings in front of people who have a want, not necessarily a need. There's certain people who maybe they have a family that's growing, or maybe it's an older couple downsizing. They might have more of a need. They're up on the internet every morning, whether it's Zillow or Realtor.com, just trying to find that 2 or 3 bed with minimum 2 baths and, refreshing. Where's the listing? Not so with the luxury category. Many times they don't know they want it until they see it in front of them. So getting in front of those people is a really, really big thing. And that's kind of what started 4 years ago, that specific technique. But the larger social media technique that we've been doing, goes back much further. I think back to a meeting I had in 2013, which it's fun. Doesn't seem like that long ago, but yeah, we're going on like 12 years ago. It's crazy how fast time goes. But it was with one of the was a major business publication in the northern Colorado area. And the editor of that, when we're talking about ads and running different things for real estate, they were kind of pitching. And it's not that I didn't see the value, but I just explained to him that I'm really putting I'm really leaning into social media with my time, my energy, my dollars. And he actually laughed. He thought that was so silly. He thought it was like 12 years ago, even like people thought this is silly. Like he thought that's kind of cute. And in my mind, I was thinking like, what? I feel like it's the ultimate way to amplify a message, to get in front of people, to really scale, present a property beautifully. And, I guess on that, I've been right, and it's benefited us and hopefully benefited our clients too.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been huge and it's incredible. Even with the newsletter that you do, I do think that's worth notating, and Substack and having that out now and just being able to, one, get information out to people and just know that they can have access to top end advice is really important. But also, it's another outlet that your sellers have an opportunity to be in front of thousands of people who have been following you over the years and have trusted your advice. And so, but that would not have started if it wasn't for that idea in 2013 and kind of leaning into it. And so I think, that innovation, that adaptability is something that is seen in the overall brand that you've built over time. So
yeah, thanks. Yeah, well, you've built it too. We've built it together.
Yes,
you've been a huge part of that. And I think, if we can just continue to build Selling Fort Collins into this media brand that is educating people with a newsletter, with a blog, with things they can find on the sellingfortcollins.com website, like the ebook that they can download. It has helped people. It's going to continue to help people. You mentioned the newsletter. I just, before I walked in here, had a note from somebody. It's just after the newsletter goes out every month, I get emails and texts and, hey, this is really great. But the one I just read was from Kurt Bear, who and he's basically like, he's like, I hate newsletters, but I always read yours. And I thought, what a great compliment.
It's a great compliment. I could hear Kurt saying that too. I love that.
Yeah, but that's exactly why we're doing it. We want it to be different. We want it to actually have actionable stuff in there.
Yeah, none of it's canned. That's for sure. Greg spends a lot of time on that. I can attest to it.
And it's curated. It's not just, hey, here's the average price increase for listings in Fort Collins. I'm sure, I know there's some value in that for some people. I don't want to knock in any kind of, higher level, but this is just designed to be more granular, actionable information and stories, insight that you're not going to get anywhere else. So, the Selling Fort Collins newsletter, you can sign up for that on the sellingfortcollins.com website. Just go there and you scroll down and we'll send it, enter your email address and we'll send it to you.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about real estate, but I think it would be great for listeners to hear a little bit more just, about you and you in that space of real estate. So I'm kind of curious to hear, we get a chance to talk all the time, of great clients, actually many of whom have become friends. A lot of our close friends actually started out as clients of yours. And now these are people we hang out with and our kids hang out with. So do you have any favorite or funny or, even just memorable, maybe heartwarming stories of working with any client, something that left a lasting impression on you?
I think
I know there's a lot, but
there's a number of them, and it's, without giving the full context, it's kind of challenging. But there's been a few where, yeah, you're right. These like buyers, they become friends, and sellers do too, and you're like in this thing together. And there have been a few instances where the seller has decided they no longer wanted to sell after we're under contract, after my buyers are excited about it. Now, in the state of Colorado, seller, it's called specific performance. You kind of had to, if you're a buyer, you can, their worst case scenario, you lose your earnest money. But if you're a seller, it's not so simple. So there are some legal things there, but no one wants to go down that path. So, really just playing, really therapist to the seller, and kind of, really, I mean, I had one in particular one with some good friends of ours that live nearby. It was, you probably remember this one. I mean, it was me and I was going out and having beers with the seller. We were talking it through. I mean, we were for hours, and kind of getting him just clarity. And ultimately what happened after, I think, multiple happy hours was he got excited about the next stage of his life in New Mexico, and on he went. But it was a good example of like this profession can be a lot more than I think anybody realizes to make the thing happen that people want to happen. There is a lot that happens in the background. Sometimes it's lots of happy hour appointments with somebody who I don't know, who I'm getting to know, and just talking with.
If I can bring up one great one that I remembered, you can talk about it.
Sure.
But we actually have a testimonial video even about it, because it's just such a great story. But you were actually working with your Uncle Paul and Aunt Sally. And so they wanted this beautiful, incredible home, but kind of how you went about to make that happen, and then ultimately let them know where it went, and if they got the home or not. Can you talk a little bit about that story?
Yeah, that was a while back now.
It was.
But I can remember, there's always a strategy, and I think it's always being creative. And this case, there was a selling agent, a listing agent, and they were really just doing their best to do a great job for their sellers, and they did. They said, all right, we're not going to, review or look at any offers until I think it was a few days from that point in time. And I just said, well, what offer would it take for your sellers to not do that, for them to change their mind and take an offer tonight? And there was kind of a pause. I do remember that conversation. They said, I was like, well, that's not the rules. And I was like, well, I all due respect, I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, but I just out of curiosity, what would it take? What would the number be? And then they talked to their seller, and they came back with a number, and it wasn't very much more than the list price at all. And it was quite a competitive situation. So Paul and Sally were more than happy with that number, and we had a deal. So instead of just calling them or texting them, I went over to their place and let them know that they won their dream property, which they weren't expecting, because we weren't supposed to be everybody turning in their offers. And yeah, they were supposed to be reviewing the offers over the next couple of days. But I just came over that evening and let them know, and it was a really cool moment. They live 5 minutes away from, not even 5 minutes away from us, 3-4 minutes away from us.
Yeah, back to the whole your entire family tree. We're all within 5 miles of one another.
Yeah,
so
they're
so
there.
That was great.
And it's always, for me, it's always a line, and it's always, I want to be creative. I want to be, just doing the absolute best I can, and certainly not pushing too hard sometimes, and pushing hard enough. I always think of Mark Cuban on Shark Tank, and when he's trying to win a deal up there, he'll say, this is my offer, but you need to accept it now. And sometimes in that context on that show, it comes off a little bit, not not great, but it works, and it's a strategy. And when you're representing who you're representing, you want to do that in a way that is absolutely in their best interest. And that's what I try to do.
So real estate is an always on profession, as I like to say. And so I actually was laughing. I was putting together some questions to ask you and get ready for this. But we're also husband and wife, so I know a ton about you already. But I do want the listeners to know a little bit about how have you found your balance over the years between real estate and personal life, and what tricks have you learned? And although folks may be listening to this episode to hear just specifically about real estate, I think you can actually impart maybe some interesting nuggets that worked for you for maybe other people that are busy individuals.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, what's really cool about doing this is that you get to be around people you like. And, as I've gotten further into my career, there've been so many of these people that I've worked with that have become friends. So someone might look at my calendar, my schedule, and say, "You work all the time." And I say, "Well, I guess, but it really doesn't feel like work all the time. I enjoy it. It's my hobby and it's my profession. It's not every day is amazing. There are challenges. There are things that you have to overcome. Sometimes you get a little bit tired. All of that happens, but it, by and large, is like I'm pretty lit up every single day. So I think the biggest thing is like, find something that you like to do, and if you like to do it, you have to like to do it. I mean, if you really want to take it to a high level, I think you have to like to do it, because there's just no way around it taking a lot of hours. And if you don't enjoy that process, if you don't enjoy the people you're around, it just doesn't work. So I think the biggest thing is enjoying that, enjoying what you do, and then maybe finding kind of creative ways and fun ways to stay in touch with people and have that kind of, gel with your business. You've helped me so much, and together we've kind of built this world where we're doing these events, or you've helped me get my pickleball league together, paddle battles. So starting in the early summer to the fall, we're playing pickleball in City Park, and we have an amazing fun group of people out there playing pickleball. And this coming June, we're going to do our second annual hot sauna cold plunge event, where all sorts of families, people in our world, people who have trusted me to help them buy or sell a house, or we've just met, they're just kind of in our world. They are going to be with us in the hot sauna doing the cold plunge, stand-up paddleboarding. The kids are going to be there on the beach playing. We'll have a fire pit going. We'll have sandwiches. We'll have that cucumber essenced lemon water that you
yes,
you put
infused
together.
water is very important after a
Infused
sauna
water,
session.
all the other drinks and beers, and it's just like it was so fun last year, and I can't wait to get everybody together this year. Then we're going to have our 4th of July party. I mean, it's the best. It's the best 4th of July experience.
Well, and I think part of what you're saying too is, and we've talked about this, right? But balance versus integration.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, what works a lot better because of the nature of real estate, even if you do love it, it is something where most people, right, they do need to meet on a weekend, or that's when they're free to talk about things, if they're buying or selling. And so by integrating what you naturally like to do with the work we do is really what makes it work and makes it fun. And so having these parties, like a sauna party, Foundry Sauna, shout out to them. It'll be the 2nd year with them. We're really into wellness. You are really into wellness. It's something you really love. And so how do I do something that allows me to do something I love, but also include other people, include my community with it? And at the same time, it's building community. And again, I think that's what feels really unique to how you've approached that over the years. Is that kind of how you feel it's become more of instead of trying to strike the balance, it's been, how about we just integrate and see how that goes? And how is that fed into the overall rhythm of your work?
Yeah. I love kind of putting it that way, in integration versus balance. There's an agent in Scottsdale, Arizona, who is just a phenomenal agent named Jennifer Schumacher, and she always says your vibe attracts your tribe, and that's something that we're doing with these events. And it's my authentic self, and people get to see that, and I enjoy seeing that with them too. Like, it's okay to have fun. Like, in fact, we're all going to do better if we're having fun, if we laugh a little bit. I was on a call. This was a little while back with a client, and Nolan, our son, came into the room I was in, and he was making fart noises just with his mouth, just being a
Being a 7-year-old boy.
being a 7-year-old boy, and pretty loud. Pretty loud. It was, it was audible, and but I just kind of chuckled, and I just said, I'm sorry about that. We're going to another room. But like the person on the phone, like they chuckled, like they get it. Like, it's just like, this is real life. Like, we're not trying to put on any front. This is who we are. This is kind of like what you get. This is the real. This is the real me, and that's always going to be what I present, and that's what these events that we've done, that you've been just so instrumental in creating, is really, and shout out to Foundry Saunas too, and the hot saunas, and just all of our partners on these things. It's created a special business and a special experience, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I did want to talk about kind of making a little bit of a shift of kind of where you see Fort Collins growing, your role in it, being a part of the community. I think these events that we do are a part of you being a part of the community. 9 times, I really should say 10 times, and we make very strong efforts that whatever for events, or if it's paddle battles and we're putting beer out, that we are partnering with local vendors, other local companies, other folks who are entrepreneurial. And so that's definitely your way of really being a part of the community and growing that community feel, community-based growth, if you will. But I'm curious about, as Fort Collins continues to grow over the years, how do you envision the city's development maybe over the next decade? Like, what does that look like to you? And like, what role do you hope to see yourself in as it continues to grow? Where do you see yourself? Where do you see you selling Fort Collins?
Yeah, I think densification. If I had one word, densification. More than people, I think, have any idea or really realize right now. I think the city's been very good about proactively working on things like public transport, the bike trail system, widening roads. Widening that whole section of the interstate recently, preparing for what they know is coming. The densification. This is going to be some kind of a version of Austin, Texas, Minneapolis. And if you're looking at just Fort Collins, not including the surrounding areas, then for sure the population is going to be much less, but still it's a much smaller area. So the densification, it's going to, the infill development, and that's really going to be something, and that will absolutely have an effect on traffic. If someone's driving to this, needs to drive to work for their tech job in Southeast Fort Collins, and they're looking in Northwest Fort Collins, one thing I'm telling them now is that, that drive it's going to be a lot longer drive in 10, 15 years. So the densification is the big thing. And, I personally believe, and certainly am optimistic, and there's every reason to believe, we talked about this a lot on the show, there's this thing, Fort Collins nice. I think it was Ann Hutchison, the president of the Fort Collins Chamber of Commerce, that used that term, Fort Collins nice. And that's kind of the term that I tie to this community feel we've been talking about on this show. This is the biggest small town. Like, I think that will stay here, because so much of this growth, just going back to what we were talking about earlier too, this older, wealthier demographic, they're not moving here to have a place that they're, just going to be in, and then, for 2 months out of the year and play golf and then go back to a different place. They're drawn here because they have kids here. They have grandchildren here. I mean, there is kind of a multi-generational thing happening here. So the fabric of this growth, the reasons for this growth, it's different than a lot of other areas. And I think it lends itself to a continued down-to-earth, friendly community vibe. And I think we're just going to see more of that. I think we're going to see more restaurants. I think the dining scene is getting. That's one thing since I started in real estate here. The bar just keeps getting raised higher and higher and higher. I mean, can you imagine, you've been in Fort Collins since like the same year I was, you were just going to CSU, and like there wasn't a place like Little on Mountain, you know?
We did
You
have
know,
Canyon Chop House, but a different feel for
yeah,
sure.
different feel. And that's a nice, that was, beautiful place too. But, you know, Little on Mountain is just it feels like you're in a big city. Like you're going to get just there's like this amazing, like big city experience in this small, intimate environment. And, like Jack's Fish House and like Oysters, happy hours. Like there's so many places now, and there will be so many more. Just creating, this kind of urban experience is going to be really, really elevated. I also think just having more funds, having more resources, that we already have a lot to continue to enhance our parks, our public facilities. When you look at things like, the amazing Southeast Fort Collins Rec Center, this coming soon with the indoor outdoor pool, lazy river water slide, and the library built in, a LEED certified building, and there's going to be a pickleball facility, going into town too. And I know I'm going to gloss over this because I talk about pickleball a lot. That's in addition to all the private development too, that's going to continue to happen, and a lot of it's going to be infill and just really, really exciting. I think the types of recreational restaurant amenities are going to be elevated, and the type of real estate product too. I mean, there's some amazing real estate products here. Like the Cortina building in Old Town. There will never be another, in my mind, another building built like that. I mean, just steel frame construction, and I could go into 4 layers of 3/4-inch drywall on each side of the dead space in between all of the units. It's built like an absolute fortress, and it's 6 stories tall, which I don't think is going to happen again in Old Town. But the future though is going to be, you're going to see cool products cool inventory, cool real estate being built, innovative designs. So yeah, I'm thrilled. I could not be more excited about the coming years, because I think this amazing thing that's kind of kept its fabric, that's kept its vibe since we first moved here, and it's only been elevated, is going to get elevated just that much more.
How do you see yourself playing any particular role, like helping shape that future? Like, especially you're talking about, the products of these homes that we're about to see. Kind of how do you see yourself just continuing to grow with the city?
Yeah, I just want to be doing the exact thing I'm doing now. I want to be doing the exact same thing I'm doing now, just helping people get connected to that place. Helping if people are going to sell. So many people that sell too are just like almost all of them here. They're not moving out of Fort Collins. Like we joked on previous shows, like no one ever does that. Of course people do. Or they come back. Yeah, of course, sometimes they do. There's a job, or, our friends who, their entire family lives in Australia, and when they, their business is in Australia, so they move back to Australia. So it happens, but rarely. Rarely. And they're just moving somewhere else in town. So helping these people sell, buy, and just get situated in a way that kind of enhances their lifestyle, that lights me up. I want to be playing the exact same role I'm playing now, giving them information, via selling everything we're doing with Selling Fort Collins, in the newsletter format, in the blog format, in this podcast format, where I think they're getting information. I mean, if somebody sits down and listens to all these episodes of the podcast, they're going to learn more about Fort Collins. I mean, they're just going to know you can't learn more than that. And they're going to get like the real stories that people talk about. So just continuing to bring this value to people in the media, but also with boots on the ground, when they're here, and meeting with him, and just having fun with that is what I want to do.
Yeah, raise those babies, our babies, and raising
Oh
them
yeah.
here, and is a big part of that. And that's funny when you're talking about, a lot of people don't move from here, or they come back, and when I came here to go to school and decided afterwards I really wanted to stay here. I'm from Southern Colorado originally. I'm from Pueblo. And so coming to Fort Collins truly felt like this has the best of everything I could ever want. And at the time, all of my friends who had graduated, they're all moving to, California. They're going to New York. Some are going back to, Midwest larger cities like Chicago and Minneapolis, Denver. And what's fascinating to me now is now being at our stage with kids. Most of them also are in relationships or have children. Is when they come to visit, or if I'm sharing something fun we're doing over the weekend that took us 5 minutes to get to do with our kids, they're like, wow, I really wish I wouldn't have moved. Or we're trying to move back to Fort Collins. And can you help us move back to Fort Collins? I wish I never left. And so there is this magical pull about Fort Collins that they tend to keep coming back, whether it's moving here or visiting. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like this Fort Collins nice thing too is fascinating too. I'm curious, like,
You hear about that, yeah.
Yeah, like, and we experience it every day, right? Like, just a few days ago when I took Nolan to the Mulberry pool, cold day, snowing outside, and we just go to the nice indoor heated pool. There's a hot tub there, a water slide, and it's just one of the great city facilities. But just one thing that stood out to me about that experience was I was sitting Nolan and I are having a great conversation in the hot tub, and he mentions, like, yeah, it'd be fun to go to a place with even more water slides sometime. I'm like, yeah. And then there was another dad sitting on the other side of the hot tub, and he gives me 3 suggestions about other places we could go in northern Colorado, and just like in detail. And so we have this conversation, and that Fort Collins nice, that community vibe, it's special.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I'm curious. So we're kind of nearing the end of season 2 for Selling Fort Collins. And so it's really been growing. It's been exciting. But I don't know that you've ever really talked about, why did you start this podcast, right? You are in real estate. You love real estate. But why a podcast? How has that helped? And what are you most looking forward to about it for a future season?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to kind of this, our Selling Fort Collins brand. I want this to educate people, help people, inform people. And I think everyone likes to absorb information differently, whether that's a newsletter or a blog or, listening to something maybe while they're walking their dog or working out. And so, that last one, that's what I want to cover with the podcast. And I also think there's something special about hearing things in other people's words. So if you're listening to the mayor, if you're listening to the president of the Chamber of Commerce, if you're listening to the first episode we ever did with Sean Belangi, the CEO of New Belgium, and why he moved here with his family and what he likes about it, you're going to hear so many nuggets. You're going, I think, learn so much about this area. And really, that's what I want to accomplish with this. I want people to learn. This is, I think, the biggest decision, one of the biggest decisions you can make in your entire life is, where you live. It's probably right up there with like who you marry. Right? Hey, it's huge. It's huge, and not just because, your house is one of your biggest investments. Well, sure, it is, but that's not really what I'm talking about here. It is one of your biggest investments. You want to make the right choice there, but it's your life. It's your lifestyle. We only get to live once, and it's hugely important. So learning as much as you can about that, learning about the parks, the trails, the business scene, where if you've got kids that like to do this or that or the other thing, what might be a good part of town for you, and getting to know the leaders in our city, getting to know people who have, maybe come before you here and their thoughts candidly on these different topics. Sitting down with the chief of police and the Larimer County sheriff on the other side of the room was a really fascinating one, and the DA, the district attorney, was another fascinating episode. But I just think you're getting such a this show such a complete view of the city, high level and then down in the weeds on so many different things. And just helping you be informed, helping you make better decisions. I think hopefully entertaining you to some degree, but just providing this niche podcast with this really interesting, hopefully information that's highlighting this thing that you're interested in. I hope if you're listening to this, you maybe want to get more dialed into Fort Collins. You are considering moving to Fort Collins. You're just interested in our city. That's who I want to help. That's who I want to speak to. And that's the whole motivation behind this.
Yeah. Well, it's been really fun doing it for sure, and doing it with you. So you've done this with a couple of your guests. Now I'm going to give you a couple rapid fire questions. So maybe talk to me about favorite coffee shop.
It's funny. It is a lot harder when the tables are turned.
Yeah, now you know what it feels like to be in the hot seat. Yeah.
My favorite coffee in Old Town is Harbinger.
Okay. Favorite coffee is Harbinger.
Jonathan Jarrow he's an absolute genius of a barista.
Yes, he's a savant.
And it's just like, it is in my mind, is like the best coffee. I also really like Lima. Like I like to go to the Lima coffee shop if I'm going to sit and work for a little bit. That's kind of my jam. In Lima, if you get their specialty pour over, like they have an incredible specialty pour over always on the menu. Those are I'm going to kind of give two there, but those are my two favorites.
No, that's great. I think there should be a difference between coffee shop and coffee. That's a great one. Lunch. Where are you grabbing lunch?
Yeah, I guess that's a tough one too. I think, I'm always going to, I love just the local places that, like Gerard's, DC Oaks on North College, on north part of Old Town of College Avenue. DC Oaks is...
Or Penrose.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Penrose is there. DC Oaks is their sister concept in Southeast Fort Collins. So one of those, depending on which part of town I'm in. The Penrose, DC Oaks, love those for sit down. It's kind of tough to go wrong with lunch here. I mean, there's so many places you can go and you can get kind of a quick bite. I've got tons of suggestions. That's one where I get that question a lot from people, and I was like, what kind of food are you in the mood for? Like, I love going to the Rio for lunch too. I love the Rio salad with the champagne vinaigrette dressing and the grilled shrimp on top. Like that's a really good lunch too. But yeah, like the Rio or the Penrose if I'm in Old Town. Austin's has a really good lunch menu too. Rotisserie chicken, meatloaf if you want something a little bit more hearty. So those are a few. Southeast Fort Collins, I'm going DC Oaks all day.
I would also throw out there, you do go to Illegal Pete's a lot, since I do look at the company credit card. So
Yep. Yeah.
You got to put that on the list. That's more of your grab and go, like I'm on the
grab
run.
and go. Illegal Pete's for sure. Love the rooftop patio at Illegal Pete's in the summertime.
Yep. All right. And then let's talk about, do you have a favorite park or natural area you like to go?
Yeah, I mean, I just love walking. Lee Martinez Park has a lot of places you can get on the Poudre River Trail system, but that the Lee Martinez Park and getting on the Poudre River Trail from there, walking along the river. I have a group of guys I'll get together from time to time. We'll just walk and talk, and that's incredibly beneficial for a lot of reasons. Just mentally, it's great. It's good exercise. You get sunlight. You get to talk to your friends. But walking along the river, you can take that. Heck, if you're really in a good conversation, you can walk all the way up to Bellevue, different city, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. You hear the river. That's my favorite place to go.
Favorite pickleball court. Does it depend on the season and who you're playing with? Yeah,
it definitely just depends on the season and who I'm playing with. I mean, Nate has a pickleball court in his backyard.
Let's go. That's a private court.
That's a private one. Play at the country club a lot, which is great. But I really just the city park courts where we do paddle battles. That's just right at City Park. Right by where people can get on the trolley and ride the historic trolley all the way down Mountain Avenue into the heart of Old Town.
And Lewis Tennis School is so great at helping us get set up with that. So they're awesome.
They are awesome. So just the overall scene at City Park with everybody playing paddle battles, that's probably the winner.
Great. I think my last one would be, favorite place if you have any family, friends coming into town and you get a day with them, what type of day are you building with them? And then say they're telling you, can you give me like the quintessential Fort Collins experience? It's them and maybe a couple of their kids. What are you taking them to do?
Yeah, let's get up real early. Let's get up right with the sun. Let's get over. Yeah. See, it's always hard when it's the kids because it always,
Throws it off a little
it
bit.
throws it off a little bit. Let's do this without the kids first.
Okay. Yeah, two different. Yeah.
We're going to get up with the sun. We're going to Lowry State Park. We're going to hike. We're going to do Arthur's Rock. We might even stop off and do Wells Gulch. We're just going to get some morning hiking in. And then from there, this is going to sound pretty ambitious, but we might go and, it's late morning, hop on one of the, there's 3 different companies that do the rafting trips, and we'll bring our water bottles. They have all of the gear and stuff there. We'll hop on the bus and we're gonna go on a raft ride. We're gonna get up there by midday, and we're gonna raft maybe the lower section of the Pooter. Then that's going to take us into the mid-afternoon. There's going to have to be food in there somewhere. I'm assuming we can pack some lunches in the morning. And then by late morning, we're done. Then we're going to go back into Old Town, and we're going to probably just, hit at least 2 breweries. We got to do Odell. I love New Belgium too. Like, those are the big ones people really want to see. And then maybe do 3, maybe like throw a third in there. One of the smaller kind of, like maybe we hit like the Equinox, like that cool, like little hidden back patio there.
Hello Brew Company is a fun one.
Hello Brew Company is a really fun one right by New Belgium. So catch a little bit of the beer scene, and then we do dinner. Where do we do dinner? I mean, there's so many places we could do dinner. I would probably want to take everybody out to like Little on Mountain. I think that would be our favorite.
Japango's really fun. It's kind of newer.
Japango's newer. Japango would be a really, really great one too.
Yeah, if you're looking for a really high-end sushi experience. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then after that, we're going to walk through Old Town Square. There's probably going to be live music playing. There's probably the fountains, coming out of the ground with the kids playing, and that's just this picturesque scene, listening to music, talking, hanging out. Maybe go by the Exchange Project. And that's the big outdoor place where you can get a beer and walk around this plaza. But we're gonna go there for Little Man ice cream, the big giant milk churn. You can't miss it. It's kind of like a monument in Old Town Fort Collins. We're gonna go there. We're gonna get some ice cream and hang out a little bit. And that sounds like a pretty good day.
That's a pretty great day. If you were adding 1 or 2 things, if it was more so kids in tow,
yeah,
what's like a highlight that families should know about if they're coming into town?
Yeah, I think if there are kids in tow, it's really going to be just kind of going to some of the cool parks. We love going back to Lee Martinez for a moment. They have one of the newer kind of city parks there with all the new equipment for kids. I mean, the kids love that. I mean, they play their faces off there.
And it's also right next to Lee Martinez Farm, which is great. So it kind of becomes a 2-for-1. You hit the park, you go see all the farm animals.
Yeah.
You can ride horses there. It's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you think about that.
Thanks to the city. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right adjacent to Old Town, and you're playing, you're seeing farm animals, you're riding horses. And then we're probably going into the Old Town area. We're probably going to go get ice cream or something like that. We're going to go there's all sorts of fun places for the kids to eat, there. And, I think it's just more kind of focused on playing, but there's also the Children's Museum in Old Town, going there, checking that out, seeing some of those exhibits, maybe hitting, maybe even like, I'm thinking of, it gets a little later in the day and everyone's kind of winding down tired a little bit. Maybe there's a movie we can go see. That might be something where we go either to Midtown or even the Lyric up on North College, and they'll have kids movies and just kind of do something fun like that.
You can always check out the Lincoln Center too. There's always great shows there. Sometimes you can just look down and there's like a great show getting put on by the Children's Theater. Kids love it. It's fun. It feels fancy. That's also right in the heart of downtown. So, I mean, realistically, you could park your car for the day and just walk around. You can bike around. You could take the Max around, especially with kids. That kind of makes it nice that you don't necessarily have to get in your car for all the things we just named. You can actually kind of just stay in one vicinity and ride a horse in the morning and in the afternoon go see a nice show.
Yeah, you're not having to drive. If you're driving at all, you're not driving very far. And for
Yeah.
most of that,
For anyone who has kids, you just know the least amount of times I have to pile them in and out of cars, the better.
yeah. So at least for the core of all those things, you're in one place, you're parked, and then if you're doing, going to a show or something, maybe you're getting into the car once. But yeah, it's super approachable. Like it's just so easy to maneuver compared to so many places in the country. 2 years ago, now friends who they moved here from California. I'll never forget. They were, telling me how, it was Grant. They came from California, and they talking about the weekends where he would look forward to going to the park with his family. And this would just happen every single time. And this is just, where he lived, in California. He'd get him to the park, but there was no place to park at the park. So he'd kind of like, end up circling the parking lot, just waiting for somebody to leave. And it was like 8 times out of 10, everyone would be done playing and ready to go home while he'd still be circling the parking lot, looking for a place to park. And it's sort of like, it's kind of like, and that's the city, and it's different. I know every place has pros and cons, but the approachability, the ease of having kids, and giving your kids a fun experience is kind of unmatched, I think.
Well, this has been really fun, and I've really enjoyed interviewing you. Is there anything else, though, you want to share with the listeners that you felt like we didn't cover that you would like them to know about you, about working with you, about selling Fort Collins as the overall brand? Anything we only scratch the surface on?
Yeah, I'd love to stay in touch with you. If I can ever be a resource for any of you, like I'd love to stay in touch with people that listen to the show. And one way we can do that is if you go to sellingfortcollins.com, scroll down, sign up for the newsletter. Another is just, if you have questions, email me, greg@sellingfortcollins.com. It's a pretty easy one to remember. If you're in the car right now or walking the dog or working out, just email greg@sellingfortcollins.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to be a resource for you. I'd love to answer questions. Someone who listened to the podcast this past weekend emailed me, and they're from the Denver area. And yeah, it's fascinating. I just exchanged emails with them this morning, just giving them some information, being a resource. So that's what I want to do. And I hope you enjoy the podcast, and, find some other episodes with maybe some interesting guests that you might want to hear more from, and, we have other resources out there too. You can find an ebook on the sellingfortcollins.com website. If you want to get more tactical and strategic about maybe where you're looking and how you're doing things, that might be a helpful thing for you. We've got our blog on Substack right now, Selling Fort Collins. If you search Selling Fort Collins on Substack, that'll come up. So yeah, I want to keep in touch with you all. I hope you can tell that I generally do want to help, and I'm excited about this area and here to be a resource.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right. I'll see you at home.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, babe.
Yeah.